The battle for Mosul enters a new phase, but if Daesh face defeat in Iraq, are all their fighters dead? And if not, where are they now? And what do we know about the people leading the fight against them? Humanitarian groups warn of war crimes on all sides. I'm Martin Stanford. This is Insight. Welcome to Insight. Military forces have started a new assault as part of their push to take control of the western half of Mosul, the city that acts as the main base for Daesh in Iraq. But as the terror group continues to lose territory, analysts say little is known about the fate of its fighters or where they might end up. Insight's Sarah Firth reports.
Mosul, the heart of Daesh's self-declared caliphate in Iraq. Iraqi forces push in. The Iraqi military operation here has seen half of the city of Mosul retaken from Daesh in recent weeks. This is what the fighters have left behind. But there's been little information about where they've gone. At its peak, Daesh was drawing thousands of new recruits each month and controlled about a third of Iraq's territory. Although Daesh has fighters from the region, there's long been concern that foreign fighters among its ranks from Western countries like France, Britain and Germany might return home.
It's more difficult actually for foreign fighters to return home now because firstly, there's no Islamic State access to the Turkish border because of the Euphrates Shield operation, which driven the Islamic State from the border, the Syria-Turkey border. Secondly, I think there's a fear of there's an increased fear of being arrested and being captured by rebels, for example, or being arrested back home in Europe if they try to return. So I actually think in terms of the means of returning is more difficult now than it was before.
Ahmed is an Iraqi investigator and says little is known about where the fighters have gone.
There's rarely a situation where ISIS fighters are captured. They simply fade away to fight another day in another battle in another. This is how they operate.
That doesn't sound like a military success if the Iraqi military are taking back territory but not managing to diminish Daesh.
Exactly, and without US air support, the Iraqi military and the supporting militias would have not gained 1 inch because they're completely unorganized. They lack the strategic and logistic knowledge.
The disappeared Daesh fighters aren't the only concern. Social media accounts linked to some of those militias credited with helping defeat Daesh here have shown some disturbing tactics.
There's executions, there's killing, there's revenge, there's all kinds of things happening with absolutely no judge, no legal system to take care of this. If he is an ISIS fighter and he's captured, then he should be processed legally. People should go into prison, they should be interrogated, they should be interviewed, they should be investigated for all sorts.
Lawyer Saba Al-Mukhtar says forces fighting Daesh could be committing war crimes.
Until now, we have not seen any evidence of fighters being killed. I mean, if the government and the militias and the Daesh and the rest, I mean, the Peshmerga, if they have killed so many terrorists, where are they? No one is showing dead Daesh people. We're seeing lots of dead civilians.
One of the most brutal and capable terrorist organizations is slowly being pushed back. Losing ground and morale, there's no doubt that Daesh is on the back foot. Iraqi forces have started a new offensive on the western side of Mosul, a difficult operation with a huge civilian population to consider. What comes next, though, is not clear. Among the rubble and remnants, slowly Iraqis are trying to rebuild. But with evidence that crimes may be being committed by pro-government forces, and with concern over foreign fighters returning to Europe, scenes like this of celebration of victory over Daesh could prove short-lived. Sarah Firth reporting for Insight.
Well, to discuss more on that, David Hurst has joined us. He's editor-in-chief at the online news portal Middle East Eye. As we speak, David, there are further battles going on. The push against Daesh, does it still have momentum or is it stalled, do you think?
No, it has momentum, although there's some very hard fighting ahead. I think it's easy to be too confident at this stage because we can see, you know, the fall of al-Bab is a big thing, certainly for Turkey, with quite a lot of implications, certainly for its pushback against the Kurds as well. But there's a lot more fighting to come. From al-Bab down to Deir ez-Zor, and Deir ez-Zor is the worst, is going to be where the worst of the fighting takes place. It's about 210 kilometers. So there's a lot more fighting, and al-Bab took about, Mosul has already taken 4 months, yes. and that hasn't been completed.
And do we know what the end game is here? Is it that Syria, Iraq, Turkey, I suppose to an extent, wants to exterminate Daesh, any last semblance of any human being representing any of that kind of creed? Or is it they're happy that a policy of containment, if they can push them basically as far north as they can and then protect the rest of their countries so it can operate as normal?
I think they basically want to eliminate the space in which Daesh, the physical space.
They want every grain of sand back to its native country.
They do, and I think in a way that will happen, but that won't be the end of Daesh, because if you look at the history of how the whole thing started, it basically started with 80 families in Afghanistan many years ago under al-Zarqawi. It has kept its habit of constantly regenerating itself. The smaller it gets, the more dangerous it gets. And if you look at the foreign fighters now, and the countries that are supplying the foreign fighters, they're quite fragile in themselves. Mostly Tunisia, but there's also Lebanon, Jordan. There's unrest and civil unrest in the south of Jordan at the moment. All of this is ideal, fertile ground for Daesh Mark II or Mark III.
But I know it's difficult to generalise, but if we take a recruit who moves, let's say, from Tunisia and makes his way, it's normally a he, into this area of Iraq to fight, what cause are they fighting for and why do they want to do it? Is it the idea that this is something exciting to do, or is it that it is a just cause, a religious conviction? Which one of these motivators do you think is predominant?
There are a huge number of factors. I mean, one of the common denominators of the foreign fighters is a lack of knowledge of Islam itself. So, although they seek certainty and they seek purity against a corrupt world, they don't actually know that much about the fight they're entering. And in this pure, shall we say, Puritan world, it is an honor to die. So Daesh, amongst other things, is a cult of death.
So there is no, in that sense, a fear of death. That would be a good thing to do, to go to and fight for this cause. Does the fact that to come back to our point where the battle would appear to being, to modest extent, lost, is that a disincentive? I mean, do these people want to join a winning side? You know, a side in this conflict which appears to have the upper hand?
I think the closer you get to the sort of physical disintegration of the space that Daesh is going to operate, the more you've got to be careful about who you're talking about and differentiate between the kids who motivated themselves and radicalized themselves on the internet.
Yeah.
And
well, through the power of social media too. That is very powerful, isn't it, and very significant in all this?
Absolutely. And foreign fighters who are basically, I wouldn't say mercenaries, but they are like the equivalent of Islamic Radical Foreign Legion. I met them a long time ago in Chechnya and in the North Caucasus, and they were brutalized by the Russian reaction. It's no surprise to me that some of those people are still fighting in Syria.
The worry for the states where they come from, like Tunisia, like parts of Europe, of course, pockets of Denmark and pockets of Brussels and things have sent a disproportionate number of people to these causes, is again their prime reason to go to fight in northern Iraq, in Syria, or is it that they want to learn the terrorist techniques and then bring them back to their home country to bring the cause back home?
Well, I mean, I think some of them, a good portion of them, would have or have shown signs of regretting their decision and realised that the paradise that they sought isn't like that.
It's something rather different.
It's something rather different, and they'll come back. And a space must be found to reintegrate them back into
That's a challenge.
Into society. That's
They're
an
going to be
incredible
suspected
challenge.
by everybody, aren't they?
They are.
Having nefarious intent.
They are, and I just, Sweden, I think, is following a good model on this. It is not criminalising them. It is attempting to reintegrate them. But they've got 900 fighters. But let's face it, let's be honest, Sweden has huge problems. I think we're all going to have huge problems. There are going to be some who are going to pretend that they've given up the fight and know how to fight and know how to make bombs, and they're going to make bombs again. I think. I really do think this is going to be a continuing problem. There are no easy answers, there are no quick fixes.
Because you would see there won't be an end to this travelling from countries, 80 or 90 of them around the world, to go and fight for a period of time, and then the returnees present a major headache, ongoing headache, for their host country.
No, I think there'll be a continuing problem. And I think really one of the big political vectors and motivations behind radical Islamic behaviour is the lack of a political space for Islamists generally. And while you have a situation where the majority of dictators around the Middle East are Western-backed, you have that constant fire being lit and that constant motivation to seek the so-called pure response.
David Hurst, thank you very much indeed.
Thanks.
You're with Insight. Coming next, we'll hear from human rights group Amnesty. They say those fighting against Daesh are also committing war crimes.